Do you play with Kerbal Space Program?
Yes.
I haven't done that much before I started at Propulse. Then I was introduced to it, and it's a bit of shame that I wasn't aware that was a thing before I came to Propulse. But we have had some game nights with the Kerbal Space Program here in Propulse, and we also had a competition during the recruitment period where we asked if people wanted to join the competition, and the winner who performed the best in flight performance, they were given some merch.
Yeah, and those who didn't, those who were bad in Kerbal Space Program were prohibited for joining Propulse. So that's an easy way to get good numbers. Hand them a computer with Kerbal Space Program and see if they are able to reach orbit on the first try. But on a serious note, Kerbal Space Program is it's a very good way of getting like an intuitive feeling for what rocketry is all about. Orbital mechanics, I can't imagine learning orbital mechanics any other way than watching and playing Kerbal Space Program, because it's done in a cartoonish but still quite realistic way. And also there are some terms and principles that you're introduced to when playing that you will hear again and have something to do with again when joining a student rocketry organization. For instance, apogee, I learned that from Kerbal Space Program, and we use it almost every day while talking about our rockets, for instance. So among many other things, Kerbal Space Program is a very good and fun, that's worth mentioning, a fun tool of learning about rocketry.
Do you play Kerbal Space Program?
Yes, I play a Kerbal Space Program. I should say that if somebody is able to launch a rocket which goes like to Duna on the Kerbal Space Program, that doesn't mean they've got a really good understanding of rocketry, because there are these things called crack and tries, which are practically some bugs which let you kind of magically go up. So,
fair point. Yeah.
So make sure nobody's using them in the competitions.
And no mods allowed.
Yeah.
Unless it's the realism overhaul mod.
Yeah.
For Penumbra, yourself developed a rocket simulator. Why are you developing your own simulator and not using someone else's simulator? And could someone else use it?
There are several reasons for why we want to develop Penumbra. One of them is for, say, learning purposes. When you develop your own rocket simulator, you learn a lot of the aerodynamics behind it. You understand how the simulator is built up and what its limits are. That is not always easy for example, Aero or other programs which is not open source. But also another important reasons in contrast with Openrocket, for example, we want to make a rocket simulator where it's quite similar with Openrocket, but then we want to add some data from the CFD, from computational fluid dynamics, and then to improve the simulator and the output values from it. And also have a good GUI, which stands for
graphical user interface.
That's right. That was the word. And then when we develop ourselves, we can tricks with it the way we want to do. So yeah.
And another thing, Openrocket is kind of like sketch based with 2D plots, but Penumbra, it's going to be a fun user experience with like a 3D representation of the rocket and its environment throughout its flight. It's not a 2D plot, you can get that as well, but you actually follow the rocket all the way up and through parachute deployment and all that, as you would in, for instance, Kerbal Space Program. So it's going to be, for us at least internally, it's going to be a software that we know how to use from back end, front end, everything. And it's also a pleasure to use. And those things put together is quite a good combination. And and when it becomes as good as we want it to be, making it open source and sharing it with the world would be something we would want, because why restrict anybody else from using our tool if it ends up, or if it results in them making better rockets? We would want.
You could do like that. You can import a 3D model. So like if somebody designs something like in Fusion 360, they can import it there.
Yeah,
So it'll be easier.
That's what we are doing. So for our rocket, we export a step file of the assembly, and they run a simulation on it. And you can see your rocket with your fins and your nose cone and your length and all that go up into the sky.
Because well, for the as you mentioned in Openrocket, you only have like, you can choose a tube, you can choose those sort of fins, but having the details, like for example an angle, the wedge angle on the fins is not that easy to have in Openrocket. That will be possible for the Penumbra simulator.